It was supposed to be a weekend of peace. 3 friends, Mark, Sarah, and Dylan, set out on a camping trip deep in the remote wilderness of the Pacific Northwest. They had chosen a spot far from civilization, eager to escape their busy lives. No phones, no emails, just the forest and the stars. They hiked for hours, their backpacks heavy with supplies, until they found the perfect clearing surrounded by towering pines. As the sun began to set, they built a fire and sat together, laughing and sharing stories. But as the night wore on, the forest grew eerily silent. Even the familiar chirping of crickets disappeared, leaving only the crackle of the fire. "I swear, it feels like we're being watched," Sarah said with a nervous laugh. Mark and Dylan shrugged it off, saying it was just the stillness of nature. But there was something unsettling about the silence. Something unnatural. Sometime after midnight, Mark stirred awake in his tent. A strange noise had pulled him from his dreams. At first, he thought it was the wind, but the sound was too rhythmic, too deliberate. A whisper. "Come, closer." Mark's heart raced. He poked his head out of the tent, scanning the dark forest. Nothing moved except the swaying branches in the wind. He shook his head, telling himself it was just his imagination, and went back inside. But sleep didn't come easily after that. The next morning, over breakfast, Mark hesitantly mentioned the whisper. Dylan chuckled, dismissing it as a dream, but Sarah's expression darkened. "I thought I heard it too," she whispered. "Something calling." Dylan laughed again, brushing it off, but Mark and Sarah shared a glance, both unsettled by the same eerie experience. That evening, as they sat around the campfire, the strange atmosphere thickened. The trees seemed to press closer, and shadows stretched unnaturally long under the moonlight. Just as Mark was about to speak, a whisper drifted through the air, soft like the rustling of leaves. "Come to me, find me." The friends froze, exchanging terrified looks. It wasn't the wind. This whisper had intent. It was as if the forest itself was alive, drawing them deeper into its heart. Mark grabbed a flashlight. "We have to find out what it is. We can't just sit here." Sarah shook her head frantically. No way. Mark and Sarah reluctantly followed Dylan, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The whisper grew louder, more insistent, as if guiding them deeper into the forest. Closer, closer. With every step, the temperature dropped. Fog curled around their feet, and the towering pines seemed to shift, creating a maze. Mark and Sarah called out to Dylan, but the forest swallowed their voices. Then, without warning, the whisper changed. It sounded closer. "Behind you?" Mark spun around, heart hammering. The beam of his flashlight flickered wildly, illuminating nothing but shadows. Sarah gripped his arm, her breath shallow. "We need to go back," she whispered. But it was too late. The forest had other plans. They searched for Dylan for hours, calling his name until their voices cracked. But Dylan was gone, vanished without a trace. The whispers grew louder, circling them like unseen predators, as if the forest itself was alive, hunting them. Leave or stay forever? Panic surged through Mark and Sarah. They ran, stumbling through the underbrush, trying to find their way back to the camp. But no matter which direction they turned, they always ended up back at the same spot. A twisted old tree, its gnarled branches reaching like claws. And then they saw it. Dylan's flashlight lying at the base of the tree, flickering weakly. But Dylan was nowhere to be found. Sarah began to sob, overwhelmed with fear. "We'll never get out," she whimpered. Mark pulled her close, forcing himself to stay calm. "We have to keep moving. We'll find our way out. We have to." As they turned to leave, the whisper came again, but this time it was right next to their ears. "Stay with me." Mark and Sarah ran. Branches scratched their arms and faces as they tore through the forest. The whisper followed them, growing louder, more urgent. And just when they thought they couldn't run any further, they burst through the tree line, stumbling into the clearing where their camp was. The fire was still smoldering, as if no time had passed at all. They didn't waste a second. Grabbing their bags, Mark and Sarah raced down the trail, never looking back. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, they finally reached their car. Breathless and shaking, Mark fumbled with the keys, and they sped away from the forest. But even as the trees disappeared in the rearview mirror, the whisper lingered in their minds, soft, seductive, and impossible to forget. "Come back, I'll be waiting." Some places should stay forgotten. Mark and Sarah never found out what happened to Dylan. Despite search parties combing the forest for weeks, he was never seen again. The only thing left behind was his flashlight, still lying at the base of that twisted tree. And to this day, Mark and Sarah refuse to speak of what they heard in the wilderness. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls through the trees, they can still hear it, soft, faint, and full of dark promises. Come to me, stay forever.